So, hey everybody, I'm Sally Griffyn, aka Millionaire Yogi, and I'm delighted to have Elsbeth and Freddy, who are going to talk to me, all about tantric intimacy. And I'm going to let them do their own intros. So I'll hand it over to you guys, just to start.
Great.
Yeah, and also how tantric intimacy relates actually to being in the phase of dating, of opening up to the possibility to be with another. And we delve deeper into this.
Yeah, creating whatever it is you want. And the key is to listen to the resistance. Where you have resistance around what you most deeply desire is where these practices as an energetic yoga can be so essential to creating flow and ease and grace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, darling, you want to start who you are?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Freddy Zental Weaver, and Zental is my teacher name. I gave it to myself about 15 years ago. I'm one of the founders and directors of Tantra Nova Institute here in Chicago for the last 20 years. My beloved and wife and partner, Elsbeth, Dr. Moit, and I met online. So, you know, internet works. We're one of the early internet couples. At the time, I was in the software business and the marketing side in San Francisco before I moved here. And I had been studying these practices that we teach now since I was 13 years old. At the time, I was living in Hawaii with my dad, who was a practicing psychiatrist. And at 13, I was going through my puberty, spending a lot of time in the shower. And so, full of sexual energy, my father gave me a book to read on how to integrate meditation and sex practices. So I loved it. My girlfriend loved it. My athletics improved. My academics improved. I went on to college on an athletic scholarship. And afterwards, college and so on, I kept reading and doing workshops around this work and keeping it in my personal practice. Never thought I'd teach this. As I said, I was in the software business for about 20 years. And towards about 15 years into that, towards the end of that career, I was just doing it for the money. It was just a job. I was in San Francisco. Lots was happening. Yeah, I felt uninspired about my life. And what I knew about these practices was to be inspired about my life and my day and my moment. So there was an opportunity in Chicago. A company hired me, moved me here, and I was single at the time. And so I was online looking for a Shakti, a female Tantra partner. And Elsbeth popped up. And we met, and it was like kismet. That was 20 years ago. We almost immediately had this baby, Tantra Nova Institute. And over the last 20 years, we've worked all over the world teaching couples and singles how to use these practices to create more ease and flow around what they most deeply desire. And it works with anyone in a body who's willing. So we'll keep talking, and I'll let Elsbeth take it from here. Thank you.
That was a wonderful intro. Like, you know, such a classic thing. Like, you know, your dad. How amazing. What kind of special father he was. You know?
Yeah, he's still with us, 94 years old. You know, this may be his last year on the planet in this carnation, but so much from him. And Elsbeth has an interesting story too, a little different from mine.
So I wish I would have had a dad who would have given me a book on sex consciousness when I was 13 years old, but far from it. So as you probably can tell, you know, I didn't grow up in the United States, where we are now headquartered in Chicago. I was born and raised in Germany and came to the United States when I was in my late 20s to do postgraduate work in music, and then got my doctorate in education, moved into management consulting, and all of that. I mean, the consulting was in the 90s. And I had gotten really good at consulting. However, I was miserable in relationship. I had this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And while that was, you know, quite exciting at times, most of the time I was alone. And there came a time I remember vividly when I got very despaired because I saw it looming. If I was not going to produce a shift, I would leave or end up, you know, and leave this planet without having never experienced lasting intimacy and love in my life. I had experienced love and intimacy. However, I was not able to sustain it. So in my despair, I said, okay, Elsbeth, you need to do something. Some shift needs to occur. And that was the time when I delved deeply into meditation and then learned the tantric practice as a discipline, not just like reading books or, you know, here and there a little bit. No, really delving into it. And, you know, Sally, that was so life-changing for me in terms of my intimate self, in terms of relationships, because what I discovered through the tantric healing was that I had held distrust towards men. And, you know, if you had met me like 22 years ago or so, you never would have called me a distrusting bitch.
I didn't.
No, I was very charming, wasn't I?
Yes, you were. You still
But
are.
that was after my healing.
Yes, that's right. You still
So anyway, it was like, you know, underneath the surface, like on the subconscious, that something was running me that I was not aware of. And of course, then having an availability in my life is just like, if you don't trust, why would I be available? You know, I thought I was available, but there was something underneath. Anyway, so by clearing this and healing, as I call it, 6 months later, Freddy Central came into my life. And I only could, you know, recognize him because I had done that clearing, because otherwise he didn't fit the pattern. He was available, you know, so I'm so glad I was ready then. And
I'm glad too.
Yeah.
Changed my
and
life.
It has been a wonderful journey, and I will share a little bit more, in particularly for women who are on the dating path and, you know, who may be struggling perhaps with finding a beloved or the beloved, and what I can share from my own journey.
Very good.
Yeah, please do. I'd like to hear a bit about that, because having been on that journey myself, I completely relate to you, and having to, well, I'll tell you one thing, which is kind of funny, but last year I was dating and I came back out of a heartbreak. So there had been a moment where I'd always had relationships, they'd always flowed. When I left one, I would think there would be a great next one. That was sort of the mindset of it. And then I got very deeply connected to this guy who had a child. I became a stepmom, and he was a complete commitment phobe. And I mean, you could have ticked the boxes of all those. Now I know, but at the time I didn't know that he was super unavailable. But I formed this whole thing, oh, it's my family. This is going to be the new family. I'm going to have babies with him and all of this. So roll on. It didn't work out. I was completely devastated. He left. And I was like a vegetable after that. I didn't have the same confidence. I didn't have the same, ooh, you know, next, let's roll on. And so going back into the dating scene, which at the time when I was younger, we didn't have this thing called dating in the same way. It used to be you'd meet somebody, you'd hang out, you'd get along with them, and then you were going out. It wasn't all this classification of like, we're dating for a certain period of time and then it gets more serious and all of that. So I came onto the dating scene, and my first experience was, I could write a comedy book about it, like a dark comedy book about it, because they were either one spectrum of pervert or military weirdos, right? So that was the range, until I started working with a tantric healer a little over a year ago. And it wasn't about dating during that time. It was all about me, all about working with, you know, heartbreak, really. Heartbreak from this previous relationship and shifting it. So I'm just back on the scene. And
welcome back.
Thank you. And it's like, woo! So give us some tips.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, very similar to me. That so the whole thing about, you know, that most of consciousness is in the subconscious of the human being, and the 5% of consciousness that we think we are guiding our life with is just this, minimal part. So tapping into the subconscious can open up whole new worlds. And in that process, in, my tantric process, in what I was thrown back to in one of the healing rituals, there's a very particular healing ritual for the woman. And that took me back to the time when I was 18 years old. First love, first boyfriend, deeply in love, very blissful relationship for a couple of years. And then he asked me to have intercourse. And I said yes, although I don't think I was ready. And it was freaking painful. I had to go to the gynecologist. The bill went to my house. My dad opened it. All hell broke loose. He called me a whore. The boyfriend left shortly after. It was a time when I felt so alone, so not understood. And it was a time when I started to close off. And that came up in my healing, the pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain. And I thought I had, completed that. I had done some therapy around this in my 30s. And it was really good to have someone who took me seriously and who I could fully share with. I thought it was all done. However, what I did not know was that there was something like a memory on the cellular level that I couldn't access through my conscious mind, so I couldn't speak about it. However, going into that deeper state of my physical, visceral self in the tantric practice allowed me to go to that place, to that memory in my physical body. And that is where it broke open. And that is by releasing the pain, the emotional and physical pain, a new self could arise, And one thing was like, cultivating trust first in myself, because what often goes in these early experiences that, why did I let this happen? Why didn't I speak up? What was wrong with me? So trust in myself, then trust in men in general, and then Freddy came into my life.
Ta-da!
It's a good moment.
Yes. And I also had come out of heartbreak before with an unavailable man who, So anyway, so happy that this could all get cleared. And then, of course, developing with Freddy Tantra Nova, where we became very dedicated to developing and identifying the principles and practices that actually allow us to create love and intimacy consciously instead of just falling into it. Because when I fall into something, it may feel wonderful in the beginning, but when the hormones fizzle and when the newness may fade, what then? And when I fall, I don't know what I did. So I cannot replicate it. So that became very important so that we can create lasting intimacy and love in our life, and of course can do this consciously.
Yeah, amazing. And so the pair of you have been together ever since. And in terms of what you teach other people, let's hear a little bit about that. What would you say, for instance, we're in the conversation right now about authentic dating, but you may not always be teaching people about dating. You may be teaching them more about themselves. Give us a little bit of insight into that.
Yeah, people.
Before you launch into that, so we work with singles and couples, and so that of course there are a number of singles who come to us who are at the dating stage. Some of singles come to us because they want to connect with themselves first, because they don't feel ready to be even opening up to another. So there are different stages. So please.
Yeah. So, people oftentimes think of Tantra as just sexual, and it's, I'm going to have better orgasms and more sex. And And that can definitely be a consequence of the work. Essentially, though, the work is really starting to learn the practice of identifying the energetic shifts that occur that keep us on the path of what we've been doing to create what we're getting. So the key to really starting to recognize that, the first piece is starting to develop our witness state of mind so that we can start to watch the narrative, the story, the rationalization, the discontent, all the stuff we do that, you know, usurps our power, our capacity to choose. So people come with a lot of different things. They want to be in a relationship, or they want their relationship to be better, or they want to live in a place that's inspiring, or whatever it might be. So in the practice, people begin to get that they have choice about how they're creating their life, coming from that we all are choosing what we're getting consciously or unconsciously. So the practice of Tantra is one of the original yogas of the energetic body, and it's all energy. We're just a denser form of it. So starting to recognize our emotional energy body and how we can do that, and we can get into that and how we do that a little later.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a little bit more about that witness thing.
Oh yeah, we can do that, sure.
Yeah, because this is so essential. Unless I develop self-awareness, how can I become more aware of others? And if I'm not self-aware, then I just move from that place of blindness, or, you know what, from my story earlier, thinking if they were only, the guys were only available, I would be happy. Then he would come to me, totally missing that the one who was not available was me.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that, you know,
So,
and that
good.
opened up. So the self-awareness that only can arise when I can step into the witness of my physical, emotional, and mental self.
So let's talk a little bit about the witness. So I want to give your viewers an opportunity to experience this witness piece that we're talking about. So if you're willing, just seated up comfortably on top of your sit bones. Your eyes can be open, closed, or soft focus, or if you're laying down, just be in a comfortable position that your neck is, and you can breathe. So, okay, here we go. So you're just breathing now, following your breath consciously into your nose, down your trachea, lungs, extending into your diaphragm and belly like a big balloon on your inhalation. Really feel that extension. Maybe put a hand on your belly to really feel the extension of the diaphragm and the belly into the hand. And as you exhale, follow your breath back up and out through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. Continue to breathe in that manner. As your mind wanders, acknowledge it, let it be. Bring your focus back to the breath. Following it into your nose, trachea, lungs, extending into your diaphragm and belly like a big balloon on your inhalation. Continue to breathe in that manner. I'll keep saying a few more things. You are your own witness, observer to any thoughts, conversations, interpretations, or meaning. For now, you're just breathing and being. Rise of your belly on your inhalation. Flattening of your belly on your exhalation through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm.
And while you're breathing in and out, take a moment and notice how you're feeling right now, how your body is feeling. Notice any sensations. And notice your emotional state at this very moment. And then when you are ready, come back by opening your eyes.
Slowly bringing yourself back into the space.
And Sally, if you could be so kind and share a little bit how you are feeling right now.
Yes. Well, I had to ask myself, I'm a yogi also. And so the breath is very familiar. But I have a feeling that I go through life probably not always knowing what I'm feeling. So that I don't even have a sense of like I am feeling, but I don't know what it is that I'm feeling. So that question made it very deep, accurate, I suppose. I'm feeling good, actually. I'm feeling good. Um, phew, but
Yes, yeah, good. That's good to know.
yeah, I'm feeling
Well,
good.
for the people who are yogis or first time doing this, what we all become aware of is the conversation that we live in. So people say, well, my mind's too busy to meditate. I can't. Well, my mind's busy too, and it doesn't stop. But what we can learn to do is watch the conversation without all what I call the total felt sense of the conversation. So if I totally believe that it's the traffic as to why I'm so upset and anxious, then I'm going to be that. If it's just cars on the street and I have no story about it, then there's no resistance. And that's everywhere. If it's anywhere, it's everywhere. So the state of our being is that the mind is always figuring, calculating, analyzing to justify its existence. And the ego, it's never our fault. So there's always some shit wrong that we can do nothing about. And that's just the state of the clay that we live in. So from that place, we use these practices and tools to work with this carbon unit that we are, and this from the past that we live in our neurosynaptic system remembering, to then live into what I feel is our connection to this elegant design of the universe that we are, this ad infinitum of forever, which I can't even imagine. And that is our imagination, our capacity to conceive, imagine something that's never been before. And from that place, we can start to move towards what we most deeply desire. It's possible. And these are the tools to work with this form that we're in and all this other stuff. Yeah.
So that's one of the foundational tools, this conscious breath that allows us then to tap in our witness state. So how does that
build on that. Go ahead.
Translate into relationship or opening up to relationship? Because in relationship, most of us live with a myth that comes from Hollywood, from fairy tales, happily ever after, like he makes me feel this way or doesn't make me feel this way. And the myth is that there's nobody out there who makes me feel anything. Once we get that, and initially that may not be so comfortable to acknowledge, because then I cannot blame the one outside anymore for when I feel miserable, or when the orgasm is not as great as last time with him. You know, what did you do this time? It was not as good. So, you know, that it's really the reconnection or new connection with ourselves, and that the relationship is all over here, the nervous system is all over here. And as long as I'm externally referenced for the way I feel, I not only have given up my power, but I'm also not, there's no sourcing, you know, because it doesn't, if I become dependent on Freddy for my feelings, oh my gosh, it would be awful. You know, now I had to work on that, that it didn't come just easily to me, but there is a freedom then where I can return to myself and feel myself and listen to myself, as you brought up in your share, you know, the awareness of, am I even aware of what I'm feeling? Be it in my body, being in my emotions, what's going on in my thoughts. And that opens up something that I can move with, I can share with Freddy, you know, and then we may work on the way we relate to each other differently, or how he may be with me in the bedroom, or so forth and so forth.
Yeah, so I wanted to keep building on what makes Tantra Nova different from other approaches to transformation or seeing something about how we're creating our life. And that is working consciously with life force or sexual energy. And that's new and that's old. If you think of sexual energy as being here and creating life before we had language, there is a systemic intelligence encapsulated in the activation of that energy. It's creative, it creates life, and it's pleasurable when we're in it. So when you bring consciousness to the sexual, what start to show up outside of the bedroom are creativity and pleasure in the simple process of living. It's in our book, it's in a lot of books, and I've seen it from thousands of people we've worked with and in my own life. So what the essential piece of it is so we just did a little bit of meditation to really get how busy our story is, that starts to the ball rolling on how we're creating and manifesting things in our life and what we interpret. So when we're in the sexual energetic, again, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed. Oxytocin's released, endorphin, serotonin. So that's the state in the sexual energetic activation. So aligned with the principles and the tools that we're teaching in terms of breath, the witness state of mind, energetic awareness, and intention, like I want to, whatever, create a beloved, a better relationship, whatever. We get more deeply, we get the capacity to see beyond what we don't see around our unconscious energetic self, emotional self, story self, in the intimate vulnerability of this sexual piece. And that's where Tantra becomes an integral tool in transformation. Again, we haven't dropped our antagonism around the sexual yet. We're still in the process of transforming as a humanness, consciousness. And I think that that is for me, and that has been for us when we started this work 20 years ago, really it was about peace on earth. But Elsbeth said, don't say that, because people come in, peace on earth, I just want to have a better orgasm, Once you get into the work of this, you see that it's not just in the bedroom, it's everywhere in terms of the beingness that shows up.
Yeah. That's a very high state to be, though, that orgasm could heal everything. I mean, if everybody had great orgasms, what would there be a war to fight? Really, you need to be met. There is, it can sound a bit loosely childish, but I think it's profound, actually. Peace on earth, great sex, all connected, harmony amongst people, it's a very high frequency.
Yeah, I mean, we're just a thought away from peace on earth. And it's not only because we say it's not, is that it's not. So, but imagine being the energy of what we are in that sexual piece. Not even sexual, not even orgasmic, just being loving and kind and seeing ourselves in each other.
It's the
and
life,
open.
the
Yeah.
life-giving energy.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be speaking here if it hadn't been for that energy. And I also want to build further a little bit on that. It's really then about, integrating our sexual, sensual, life-giving self with our heart self or love self and our consciousness, spiritual self. And that is like a big part is really about ourselves to come to inner integration that allows then for the sense of wholeness. Because when I'm integrated in myself, I share myself with a partner or my partner in a whole way. If I'm disconnected from my sexual self, because that was something perhaps I was not supposed to experience it, perhaps I was brought up with that this is sinful, there is still a constricting energy around that. And I bring this to the relationship. I bring this to myself. Many women who come to us, there is some constriction in their sexual self that is partly out of personal history and partly out of collective history. And so to open up, to clear that so that the energy can actually flow freely. And of course, if I have a block in my heart, like we talk about heartbreak, like there is energetically a block, of course, boom, the energy comes up and then gets stuck here. Can it move freely up here? Or I have thought processes that are really debilitating, about myself being a woman, or sex is bad, or I need to have sex all the time in order to feel validated and acknowledged and even feel myself, I need it. All of that, once we become integrated and flowing in that inner flow, then the flow with the other, is a sharing. It's not that I need something from him. And in the dating phase, this is really something, like actually any phase, but given that this is a dating show, no, it's not a dating show, but we talk about
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Authentic dating is like, am I authentic within myself? And then I can share with myself. Do you want to show the ball?
Oh, great.
Which is such a
So we have this energetic ball that we use in our workshops, and we've done it with 100 people, but this is the energy ball. And it really illustrates the connectedness that we are in terms of beyond what is the disconnect. Oh, Stella, I could have been a contender, you know, life sucks, all of that stuff. Just beneath that is this savasana, this belly breath that's just breathing and being present and being in the joy of just the existence of it all. So this ball, when I complete the connection within myself, the ball lights up.
Hold it up higher so against the blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see? And then when I add Elsbeth to it, the ball lights up.
So energetically speaking, there is a circuit, there's a circuit within me that I want to be connected with. We want to be connected then, or become connected, or cultivate that energetic connection that is actually ever present. It may just have some interference.
Yeah, and in a very practical approach with this, if someone wants to create relationship, to really start to quiet down the story making and the resistance we have to that it's possible because of all the things that have happened in the past. I have lots of proof that it could never happen forward. Though forward, from here forward is quantum. Anything's possible. And yet it requires us to get out of our own way to allow it to manifest. So once we start doing the meditative work and the looking work and the inner work, we can start to what I call flatten our resistance to then live into our vision. And then it starts to manifest. That's the string theory. That's the connectedness. That's, you know, science and spirituality are saying, different from particle theory, string theory that states that every piece of matter is connected by string vibration. And we're just starting to work that and, you know, acknowledge that as a way of living and being in our life. I mean, we already use computers and everything else. That's kind of
in a very practical way, practicing, learning, relearning, and most importantly, tapping into that subtle state, because it's a subtle state. Energy is not visible. With the ball, we make energy visible and audible. But usually, you know, we cannot hear the sound of my voice that hits our eardrums. We cannot see the vibrations. We can hear them because our brain is designed for, but we cannot see it. Just as we cannot hear the frequency of light. That doesn't mean that there's no sound, you know, in the light frequency, but we cannot hear it. We can see the light frequency. So what I want to say with this is that energy is something that is not easy. It's not touchable. You know, I cannot grasp it like I can grasp Freddy's shoulder. That doesn't mean...
That feels pretty good, actually.
That doesn't mean that it's not existing. And that is the dimension we want to tune further into, that we also experience when we fall in love. There is this connection. It's just that often falling in love, we bring so much from over here that the question is, am I really seeing the other? Or am I seeing the other out through a lens, through a veil that really is colored by what I have experienced in the past?
Yeah.
You resonate with that.
I heard a great, I did a lot of landmark work. So if you are aware of that, but a lot of it is about communication. And I did many years of it actually. And there was this great landmark forum leader who said, you know, Debbie and Dave. So when Debbie meets Dave, that's the first one she's hanging out with. It all goes very well until she realizes that Dave is a workaholic. And so she has a complete reaction to that. They split up. And then Debbie goes on and meets Steve. And she's chosen somebody who consciously absolutely is not a workaholic this time. So maybe he's a carpenter. He's somebody who's all chilled out and everything. But he's got a bad temper. And so Debbie is now in bed with two men. And by the time it goes on to the third or the fourth relationship, she's dragging all these previous reactions with her. So by the fourth or fifth relationship, she's in bed with 5 men. She's making the choice of, like, I'm not doing that. I don't want that. They're all like what I don't want, you know? And it really spoke to me that at some point. I thought it was very funny.
Yeah. Yeah. We've both done a lot of landmark. Actually, my father was staff psychiatrist when it was EST back in the beginning.
Oh my God, years ago. Wow.
I did the college
Sorry.
training in '75. And so
Wow.
I'd done most of the curriculum then. And then years later, coming to Chicago, meeting Elsbeth, who was really into landmark, I redid some of the curriculum again. But they approach transformation linguistically. We approach it energetically.
Yes,
It's all leading to the
exactly.
same place. All good stuff.
Yeah. No, it is all good stuff. But amazing that there's that connection also with your dad, because your dad is pretty special. I mean, he stands out to me in the story of just permission, and it's all good. And just read this book. This will make it even better, you know?
Yeah, well, we used to have some great existential conversations. And at one point, he stepped away from the usual kind of medical stuff, psychiatric stuff, and he started an institute for creative living in Los Angeles, where the gig was basically working with people who'd come. Want me to stop?
Yeah, how
Okay.
much do you want to tell?
I was just getting into the story, but it's
I know.
okay.
A little.
But anyway, he's a very interesting guy. He's got a lot to share, and he had a great life, and I'm very privileged to have created him as my father.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I mean, he stands out in the story for me as well. So, well, what else would you guys like to say into this space? I mean, here's an opinion that I had, which I had to really get rid of. I wanted to meet somebody naturally. You know, I had this whole thing. I want to meet somebody naturally. That's how I've always had success, right? And so it was like written in stone, natural equals not on the internet. And then everybody's on the internet. So I had to see that too is now natural. You know, it was like quite a shift for me to do that, because I expected to meet people in some, I don't know, shamanic circle, hippie circle, some alternative scene. And the reality is that is not how any of the younger generation are meeting people. They're all online. And it's a big thing. So what would you say, speak into that?
So it's really about the intentionality and not being so attached to the form. You know, how it may happen. It's the intentionality to get really clear what that is, what I want to bring into my life from a feeling state, you know, and the connection with another, so that I can already live in my inner self the relationship, like that clear in my visceral self. Because then when I feel this, which is really the magnetism of pulling then the intentional electrical beam that I send out, you know, intention is electricity. And then the way I feel is like the emotions. I want to feel it. If I think, okay, I cannot get this, what I want, it didn't happen in the past, and, you know, and I'm just, even I have this old story from when I was an infant that I was not wanted, and I have evidence for it because my parents were thinking of aborting me. You know, I have a whole story around this. If I focus on that, yes, I'm not wanted, because that's the magnetism. So that combination of the intentionality, that I'm clear, like I need to be clear that I want to bring another human being, if this is a man or a woman, whatever it may be for you, into my life. I'm ready for that. If I'm just half-assed about it, guess what? It's not going to happen. If I question it, it weakens the intention. So the intention beams out, and the emotion, the elevated emotion of sensing it, pulls it in, like magnetizes it. It all happens over here. So this is why I want to become this clearinghouse, you know. And so then how it happens, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Great advice there.
And it will show up in probably a most unexpected way. So, Sally?
Watch
Are
out.
you resolved? You want
I
to?
am actually, yes, I am. I've done so much work with this, with the energy of it. And I think, you know, the period of the comedy, the bad comedy, you could not even imagine how I would meet these weird people, you know, and they were seriously weird. And now I'm not getting any of that. And that's only the work I've done on myself.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
I haven't met any of the local perverts, which is great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
but even this, you may want to let go of that, because there's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
judgment that clutters up your
Exactly.
energy. So you know, you are ready now for what you're ready for, and also considering that the other that we meet is a reflection of myself.
Mm.
So if there's weirdness over there,
Again, we all understand that conceptually, but it's like the ego says, no, 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 they were really weird. I don't know how the hell they came into my life, you know, but to get that we are creating it from somewhere that we don't see. Sometimes people listen to this, they go, oh, this sounds so woo-woo, you know?
no,
And I always will say, you know what's really woo-woo? Are single-cell amoebas, multi-cell organisms, and a universe that goes on for ad infinitum. And that's our lineage. You know, we're just uncovering what's possible, just beginning.
so also just one last point to that. It's not like that the other's weirdness may not show up within us in the same way. When I say reflection, doesn't mean we look the same, we act the same. Energetically speaking, there's something that hooks.
Oh,
And
definitely. And I think it was unavailability.
Yeah.
So I could clearly go, oh my God, yeah, you are definitely not my cup of tea. So it was easy for me to carry on with
Yes.
the unavailability.
Yeah.
You know, the
Interesting,
version
the
of it.
ego, right? The ego wants to be right, even though it doesn't serve us. But at least I was right about them being wrong, and I know I was right about what's not possible. You know? So,
Totally.
and we all do it. It's just part of the clay that we are.
Yeah.
So nice work. Well done.
Thank you. I feel like a totally different person. And that, and also I think maybe another, before we just end, because we'll end in a minute, but I think there's a real misconception about Tantra that, and I definitely had it too, that it's all about sex. And the woman that I work with, who's in Bali, she said 99.999% of it is not about sex, but that there's this new strain of it right now, which is out public being spoken about. That is all about sex, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it misrepresents. So when I say, you know, I work with a tantric healer, I'm sure that many of my friends think I'm writhing around, you know, in the bedroom, you know, whatever, on my own. Soon, hopefully,
Okay.
not on my own. But that's the misconception about Tantra.
yeah,
It's a beginning, you know. It's like people, it's almost like the world right now is just filled up with pornography because
Yeah.
it's so available on the internet. And it's almost like the kid that says, I want dessert before my meal. And the parent says, okay, here, eat dessert. So they eat dessert until their stomach is just full and they can't eat it anymore. And then you say, okay, want to try some vegetables now? And it's almost like the world has to go through this pornography because of this whole denial of sex. And then once, because there was a guru that I used to follow, and when he would bring people in, when people would come to study with him, he would put them in a room and let them have sex, as much sex as they wanted for 2 weeks. And then when they were all burned out on orgasms, he'd come in and say, now we meditate. It's like, you know, get it out of your system. And that's what the world is kind of doing with it. I see with the pornography. But I think this conversation is becoming more and more a listening that is time has come.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Well, on that very happy note, is there anything you'd like to say to end the interview? I mean, we will also have all your information about how people can find you, where to work with you guys, because you are obviously just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But is there anything you'd like to say?
yeah. I just want to say that we have a gift for you. It's called Creating Intimacy and Love. And we thought we would leave you with this gift out of this conversation to give you some more practices so that you can start now daily to do some practices to connect with yourself, this connection within yourself. So it's part of your readying yourself. So that will also be on the eSummit page.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody completely appreciates that. And from my perspective, it's been just wonderful speaking to you. You know, real insight. And I think this is the level of authentic dating rather than the swipe left or right. It's this level of connection that's really going to shift the planet, actually, towards world peace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sally. Wonderful.
Yeah, great platform. Thank you for inviting us, and Elsbeth and you all putting it together.
Oh, pleasure. And I'll see you sometime in Chicago. And
We look forward to it.
so
Thank
much love.